Hiya, welcome to LSB Feasters Radio Channel and Travel Corner, where our mission in life is keeping great radio from the past alive. Hi, I'm Ellis, radio's second best friend, and today we're going to Atlantic City and WPGG, or as the station identifies itself, 1450 WPG. Now, this Aircheck features legendary radio and television personality Ed Hurst. It's a tribute rebroadcast that was aired a few days after his passing in October of 2020. Now, he was a big deal in Philadelphia and Atlantic City. He started on radio at WFPG, the forerunner for WPGG, back in 1943. And eventually he made the big time in Philadelphia. In the 1950s, he was teamed with Joe Grady. And Grady and Hurst, they were a popular radio team in Philadelphia. Ed hosted one of the first shows to feature teenagers dancing on television. In fact, he did it before American Bandstand, and Dick Clark once said that if there were no Ed Hurst, there's a chance there may not have been a Dick Clark. Ed Hurst is best known for his days broadcasting from the Steel Pier in Atlantic City. His Steel Pier show originally started in 1958 and lasted until the late 1970s in different forms on radio and television. Ed retired, but then radio stations in Atlantic City like WPGG and WOND and WIBG brought him back out of retirement to continue to do radio shows. Sadly, Ed passed away October 2020 at age 94. Hey, if you like what you hear, feel free to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel too, and after you do, smack that bell, and you will be notified whenever we post anything new. You'd figure I've done this enough, I wouldn't be stumbly like this. Anyway, let's get to today's Aircheck, the one and only Ed Hurst on 1450 WPG Atlantic City.
This interview with Bob Hope was done while he was playing the Valley Forge Music Fair with Rosie Clooney. Give a listen.
My guest this afternoon on the Steel Pier Radio Show, perhaps one of the great performers of all time. No, it's not Georgie Jessel coming back. It's a gentleman who will be opening at the Valley Forge Music Fair on Wednesday night with Rosemary Clooney for his annual pilgrimage to the Valley Forge area. And I'm speaking about Mr. Bob Hope. And before we say anything else, Mr. Hope, permit us to wish you a happy birthday.
Thank you very much. I'm getting a little sick of that.
Well, what's the alternative?
What can you do?
That's right.
Yeah, I don't mind getting. I don't want to get any younger. I just want to keep getting older.
You do?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll tell you this. If we can do it the way you've done it, everybody's for it.
Yeah.
So there. What's this I hear? They named a street after you next to the NBC studios?
They named a street after me last year, the one you go into NBC, but now they named the off-ramp. They put up the signs, and they made a whole big thing out of the off-ramp off the freeway, you know?
I think they'd be smarter to name the network after you.
I should have bought it years ago.
Well, you can still do it, I understand.
Yeah, that's a little too much now.
A little bit too much. Besides, I don't think you could put a putting green in some of those studios there, although you might. Are you playing much golf lately?
I'm playing every chance I get.
Yeah, it's a shame you can't be in town here on Monday, because the Variety Club is once again having their Pro-Am tournament.
Oh, yeah. I play quite a bit in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah, I know you play all the very tough clubs.
Yeah. And I belong to Gulf Mills.
Oh, you do? That's right.
Which is right around the corner from the Valley Forge, and I love it.
Yeah.
And I play there all the time when I'm at the Valley Forge.
I know all about it.
Yeah.
Has your handicap lowered any?
No, my handicap is about 18.
That's very respectable.
So if you know anybody would like to come in, just bring money and come.
Are you playing with President Ford any time lately?
No, I play with him all the time up at Vail. I was with him the other night for my wife's birthday. But he's playing so good now, he's ruining all the jokes. I told him to hit somebody.
Yeah, is his handicap lower than yours?
Oh, yeah, he's about a 15.
You're kidding. I've seen some of his tee shots. I can't believe it.
But you can't trust these guys. I had to shoot a 74 the other day to beat him.
Wow. How about that? Well, now, we also would like to know, since you come into this area a couple times a year, are you changing the act much this year?
All the time. Yeah, I've got a new opening, and I've got a lot of new material to do.
Now, you still doing a little shuffling and a little singing, too?
A little bit, but I sing all the time. I'm doing a number of the opening calls. I don't have an opening song, so what am I going to do?
Well, a special material, huh?
Yeah, special material. And I'm doing, I do a whole thing about the states that I've been doing that's very big. They like that. And I do buttons and bows, and I do thanks for the memory.
Well, who else is identified with it? I want to tell you how much we enjoyed your television effort on NBC the other night. It was just super.
From Paris.
Yes, indeed. Did it take you long to shoot that program?
No, we were shooting about 8 days over there.
Because I was wondering, with the costume changes that you have during the show...
yeah, we did a lot of stuff, We were on location a lot.
Yeah, well, that's some pretty beautiful locations. Looked like the weather was pretty good while you were there.
Yeah, we got a good break.
When you stop down on those, where you have to put on those period costumes, do you stop down long?
What do you mean?
Well, what I'm trying to ask you is, if it takes you 8 days to shoot it, how much do you do in one day, and how many takes of the same...
Well, it all depends, For instance, the King Louis thing, we had to shoot in sections because people kept walking in and walking out,
Oh, yeah.
So it's pretty hard to keep the cameras working on them because if they throw the cameras on one scene, they want to get 2 close-ups on the main shot. Then somebody walking a door, they have to start fresh. So it took us about 3 hours to shoot that King Louis sketch, the one we closed with.
Well, it's not a chore for you to do those television specials, is it?
No.
You love it. It's easy.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, I hope you go on.
Listen, you love it. I love it because it's a challenge every show, and it keeps you thinking and working,
Yeah, you're right. Well, Bob, you don't mind if I call you Bob. Everybody calls you Mr. Hope, but because I'm...
Bob is pretty nice. Just don't go any other way.
All right.
I think it's silly, Your Majesty. I think that's ridiculous.
Oh, I love it. Your Majesty. Well, maybe Mr. Wright at GE calls you that.
Yeah.
I know you don't call him that. Anyway, you're opening Wednesday with Rosemary Clooney at the Valley Forge.
I'll see you there, huh?
Okay. Thanks a million. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Well, here's the signature song that Bob Hope used to use in all of his programs and all of his shows. And with Shirley Ross, who was a contract player for Paramount Pictures when this was cut back in 1938 or 37. Remember Thanks for the Memories on the Steel Pier Radio Show?
Thanks for the memory. Thank you so much.
Well, that's the first half hour of our show, the Steel Pier Radio Show on WPG, Talk Radio 1450. Let me tell you what's coming up. We're going to see who was playing in the Music Hall Theater the summer of 1957. Some giants, gotta tell you. So don't you dare move that dial, because we'll be right at you.
Thanks for the memory. How lovely it was.
This is WPG Talk Radio 95.5's Harry Hurley. Please join with me in properly mourning the passing of the legendary Ed Hurst, who passed away at age 94. Ed Hurst began his multi-Hall of Fame radio and television career right here on then WFPG AM radio. Ed was only 16 years old and was a full-time broadcaster. Ed Hurst was the longest-serving broadcaster in American history with a storied career that spanned more than 75 years. It is a record of accomplishment that will never be matched. Today, we salute and mourn the life and times of the legendary Ed Hurst here on WPG Talk Radio 95.5. This is Harry Hurley. I'll have much more to say about Ed this Monday on Hurley in the Morning on WPG Talk Radio 95.5.
Well, we're here for part 2 of today's Steel Pier Radio Show. And we're going to play a recording now. I have always been wild about Sergio Mendes and Brazil 66. And my executive producer, Don Hurley, and myself were discussing how did they get the name Brazil 66. Well, I have to confess, I don't know. But Don Hurley, being the Sherlock Holmes of the music business, will find that out, so we'll know one day. But here's a truly great recording with Lanny Hall and You Stepped Out of a Dream.
Could there be eyes like you safe in my heart, so safe in my
Well, folks, I would say that the halcyon years of the 50s were the premier attractions in the Music Hall Theater on Steel Pier. All name acts, all carving their name in the Hall of Fame, so to speak. Frank Sinatra again appeared the summer of 1957.
I get a kick every time I see you.
I don't know whether he did 8 shows that year, but you know, in those days we used to call it a hammered rain. What was a hammered rain? Not enough to drive you off the boardwalk, but into the Steel Pier. Pat Boone also appeared.
Writing love letters in the sand.
And that was a big summer for Pat Boone on the pier. Followed by that singing rage, Miss Patty Page again.
How much is that doggy in the window?
Wonderful, wonderful Copenhagen, friendly old girl of town.
Danny Kaye.
Once I sailed away, but I'm home today, singing Copenhagen.
You know, Mr. Hammond brought these same acts back again and again because they filled the theater. And one of my favorite artists was a gentleman by the name of Frankie Lane.
But that lucky old son got nothing to do but roll around heaven all day.
And Jane Russell also appeared again.
Baby, I'm gonna want to as long as I live.
Say, boy, what you gonna do?
Followed by the Mills Brothers.
I'm gonna buy a paper doll that I can call my own.
The darling of MGM musicals and swim tanks, Esther Williams.
On the bright side,
On the light side, I got out of bed on the right side.
The Four Lads from Canada.
Standing on the corner, watching all the girls go by.
And then, to wind up the season, Dorothy L'Amour, without Bob Hope or Bing Crosby.
I hate the tall, dark, handsome type. I hate a man who smokes a pipe, but your dopey walk, your double talk, I go for that.
And then Stevie Lawrence.
I've got you under my skin.
And Johnny Ray.
If your sweetheart sends a letter of goodbye.
All the summer of 1957 on the world-famous Steel Pier.
Where the dancing's grooving, with the swinging bands, and lots of movies.
Well, folks, it's time for our producer's pick. But as usual, Sherlock Hurley did discover why Sergio Mendes called the group Brazil 66. Don, it's all yours.
Well, hello again, my great friend Ed Hurst, and welcome aboard to WPG Talk Radio 1450, Ed. It's a pleasure to be here with you, as always, and happy to be with a great lineup here on WPG.
You know, I started my broadcast career on WFPG.
So you're back to the future, Ed.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, Ed, we left that cliffhanger out there. Brazil, 66, Sergio Mendes, and he had several incarnations in his career. He started in the late 50s and had great success in the mid-60s. And was the year 1965, they had just put out a couple of albums, Ed. Brazil and Sergio Mendes were transitioning, and they switched lead singers. And in the year 1966, Sergio Mendes makes a decision to replace his original lead singer, his lady singer, with Chicago's own Lanny Hall, who I knew you knew very well, Ed. So the rest was sort of history. They sign up with Herb Alpert and A&M Records, and they go on to have huge success with Burt Bacharach and many other hits through the years. So there's your answer, Ed. They switched lead singers. They were looking to transition, and they used the year 1966.
I knew you would find it. I just knew it. Good. Now, what's your pick?
Speaking of great years, the year 1957, what a transitional period in music that was, when rock and roll and pop was still at the top of the charts with good buddies of ours like Pat Boone, who was the top of the chart in 1957. He had more hits than anybody, including one of the records of the year was the song April Love, Ed. So I figured I would stay with your theme of 1957 and play one of Pat Boone's biggest records, the record of the year in 1957, April Love, from the motion picture of the same name. For you, my great friend Ed Hurst, and the Steel Pier Radio Show on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Here's Pat Boone, Ed. He's going to talk just to you and your listeners and then sing this great song.
Friend, this is Pat Boone, and we're looking back on 1957 on Steel Pier Radio. Just like you, I am listening to Mr. Ed Hurst, the Steel Pier Radio. I had been on the charts for 220 consecutive weeks, usually, almost always, with two records, because our friend Randy Wood, his M.O. was, as soon as one of my records peaked, even if it was like number 2 or 3, and dropped a couple of buttons, he would release the next record right on top of it. So there was always one record going up while the other was sliding down. And we just stayed on the charts for over 4 years.
April love.
Well, I don't want to get too maudlin now, but in introducing this next recording, I have to tell you that James Taylor wrote this song called The Secret of Life. And I listened to that lyric over and over and over again, and if that doesn't do something to you, I miss my guess. But Rosemary Clooney has an excellent version of The Secret of Life, and we're going to hear it now on WPG Talk Radio 1450.
The secret of life.
And naturally, we get a kick out of you. We couldn't go wrong with Cole Porter, number 1, the summer of 1966. All right, Francis.
I get no kick from champagne.
The show time passes fast and furious on the Steel Pier Radio Show. We have time for one more, and we'll go out with Nat King Cole and his daughter, Natalie, still walking their baby back home.
Gee, it's great after being out late. Nighty-night.
Well, folks, I hope you've enjoyed the show today and that you'll tell your friends, relatives, and enemies that we're now located at 1450 on the dial. That's Talk Radio, WP. And we want to thank the producer who also held and kept this classic interview of Bob Hope. The executive producer, director is Don P. Hurley. Ed Hurst saying so long, and we'll see you next Saturday at 4.
Thanks for the memory. How lovely it was.
95.5 FM and 1450 AM WPGG Atlantic